Welcome to the May 1st edition of the Saints Insider Podcast. I am Luke Johnson. I'm filling in for Zach Ewing as the host today. I'm joined by columnist Rod Walker, beat writer Matthew Paras, and columnist Jeff Duncan, who has some takes on things we're just going to leave alone. Right? Right. Okay. Look, we've got a lot of draft coverage to get into today. We're going to recap the entire draft, the undrafted free agent class, our takes on that. But before we get into that, I want to take a moment to congratulate Mr. Duncan over here. Yesterday, his book that he co-wrote with Steve Gleason, A Life Impossible, was released. You guys should all go out and get that because nobody tells that story better than Dunk. So, Dunk, I just wanted to say congrats, man. And I'm looking forward to reading your work.
Thanks. Yeah, we're going to have a couple of signed copies up soon for people that want to enter. I think in a little poll we're going to have or some kind of little contest. But, yeah, it's great to finally see that in bookstores, and really happy for Steve and Michelle, all the work they put into it. It was a pretty good day on Tuesday.
Just briefly as you can, what was that process like working with Steve and telling his stories? I know it got pretty emotional for him at times.
Yeah. Look, I'd say if anybody knows, I'm sure most people out here know Steve's story, but there's a lot in there you probably don't know. I learned a lot, even as well as I knew Steve and Michelle, and I think the thing that makes the book so special is, it's just completely honest. There's nothing held back about their lives, their relationship, everything they've been through on their journey with ALS. And it's not necessarily a football book. It's not necessarily a book about ALS. It's really a book about life. And if you read it, I guarantee you'll pick up a lot of life lessons on basically how to live. I mean, that's basically what the book's about. It'll change your perspective, I promise you.
All right, so that is A Life Impossible. Go check it out. It's by Steve Gleason and Jeff Duncan. We're very happy to have Jeff off book duty here so he can get back to actually doing some work. With that in mind, look, it is the NFL draft we're talking about, and we want to make sure we let you know that this season's NFL draft coverage was brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Now, at East Jefferson General Hospital, Tulane Doctors are bringing academic medicine to more patients in new communities. Look for the shield to know the future of medicine is here. Find your physician at TulaneDoctors.com or call 504. Is this a 4 or 9? 504-488-5000. Maybe it's 988-5000. Use Google to find out. Go to TulaneDoctors.com. Check it out.
But call one of those two numbers.
Call one of those two numbers. I got to talk to Zach Ewing about his handwriting over here. Otherwise, very nice handwriting. Okay, guys, let's get into the draft here. The Saints selected 7 players, 5 of which came on day 3 of the draft, rounds 5, 6, and 7. We know they addressed their greatest need in round 1, and they got some interesting players beyond that. So, Rod, we'll start with you. When you were looking at this draft class and the immediacy of it, we're going to do the thing that is probably a fallacy, but we're going to grade it a couple days after the draft. So what was your overall take on this class?
So we're giving the grade now?
Grade right now.
I'll probably give it and I know this is going against what I said because last week I said if they get a tackle, I'm giving them an A automatically, but I'm probably giving them a solid high B. I mean, just a bit.
High B. We're talking like 88 here?
Yeah.
On a 1 to 100 scale? All right.
Yeah.
I like it.
I mean, I really like the first round pick and I really like the second round pick, and I like the Spencer Rattler pick, so maybe, but the guys at the end of the draft who, probably aren't going to help much anyway. I don't know, but so I'm giving them a B. I don't want to go overboard and give them an A just yet.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, the reality of those day 3 picks is I think some of them have some really exciting traits, but when most of your class is day 3 picks, it's hard to find immediate contributors.
Right.
Hopefully those guys can contribute somewhere down the line, but if one of them does this year and actually makes an impact, they've got a really good class, but it's going to be hard to find. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you on a B. Like, I think Fuaga fills an immediate need. McKinstry, I liked the pick. I thought the value was really good, even trading up for him of how he was falling like I was a first-round talent. But I don't know where he fits in right away if they keep Marshawn Lattimore. We can talk about whether they do or not. But if not, I mean, I really want to see him on the outside. I don't think nickel for him is – I know they talked about it being an option, but I just don't see it necessarily right away with him. And then, with so many day 3 picks, I thought Dennis Allen's press conference was really interesting because normally coaches get up there and they give you the hard sell of, we got better today and for the future. These guys are going to come in right away, make an impact. And Dennis Allen was like, yeah, these guys will develop. There'll be some backups. Like, we like our draft, but he didn't give the hard sell as so many coaches and executives do that time of year. So I think they're more measured, but I thought it was a good draft overall for them.
I think it's smart not to give a hard sell
Sure,
on day 3 picks. Look, this Saints roster does need a lot of help, right? I think they need a lot more help now than they did in the last several years. But just the reality of the situation is, like, there's some nice developmental traits with those guys. There's a vision where you could see them making an impact as rookies. But like, you don't want to go into a season where you're like, yeah, our 6th round defensive tackle is going to play 30% of our snaps, right? I think that it's smart to be measured there. And look, we're going to be talking about especially their first 3 picks more in depth. But I do want to make a point. I think you brought up a good point about Kool-Aid McKinstry, is that he was an outside press man corner at Alabama, and really when you're looking at their top 3 corners right now, they're probably all best suited to be outside press man corners. And the Saints don't. They are not the type of team who's going to draft a person who is like at least in the high draft picks, a person who is going to slot in as like a slot corner, a slot receiver. Like, they take guys who they like the overall traits and they're like, we'll find a spot for them. It's an interesting strategy. I think it kind of worked against them a little bit last year when they had Alontae Taylor trying to figure out how to play slot corner on the fly. He had some pretty significant ups and downs. He's a really good player, I think, just probably playing out of position. So it was really interesting to hear them say, we had this guy who played almost exclusively on the outside, thinking we can play him on the inside, because it's kind of how they do business. And maybe not the best way to do business, but maybe it's going to work out great. I don't know.
I know it was before my time here, but right, Lattimore would kick inside for the best matchups, depending on if they moved Mike Evans to the slot, he'd go follow him, right?
Right, yeah, he's a guy who shadows the number 1.
Yeah, so he could do that. And then, Alontae Taylor, I think he showed enough. I know he got benched a couple times, but I thought he showed enough in the slot to where I think it's worth building on year 2 and letting McKinstry kind of develop an NFL skill set on the outside at first. And then if the inside is such a problem, they could always move Ugo Amadi back there. I thought he played okay enough to where if you needed him to, he could do that.
Yeah, look, I think the only way we judge it really is to take into context the picks they had. I mean, we talked about a lot. They only had 2 in the top 149. So, when these analysts across the league are giving them grades and not grading them quite highly enough, what were they supposed to do? They only had 2 top picks. So I think in light of that, they did an excellent job in maximizing. I thought the McKinstry pick was excellent. I mean, that's those positions are premium positions. Tackle and corner are 2 of the premium positions in the league, and they addressed 2 of those. And I think in time, this isn't going to be an impact class right away beyond maybe Fuaga. But in time, we may look back on this favorably if they do move on from Lattimore. McKinstry's a starting caliber player. He allows you also to have flexibility if you want to move on from him. And then the same thing with Rattler. I mean, he's obviously not going to contribute right away. But if he does somehow develop into a starting quarterback, you feel pretty good getting him in the 5th round.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your grade then?
I think I would probably say, like Broad, probably an upper B, considering how limited they were. So I think the word we would use is B+, right?
I'll go out on a limb and say A.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I really Fuaga was the 4th offensive tackle taken. I think they got lucky that he fell to him. There's definitely a realistic scenario in which all 4 of those guys are gone, and you're left, I don't know, kind of between a rock and a hard place. I don't know if Fatanu was really going to fit what they needed.
Right.
So I think that first round pick was such a huge deal for this team and what it needs right now, on top of the value it gives you in future years, especially if he can play the left side, which is yet to be seen. But if he can, I've had multiple people say they think he can, then that's going to be a huge pick for him. I really, really like the McKinstry pick in round 2, especially after like a bunch of the receivers went off the board early in that round. And they got him, they traded up to get him right before that run of cornerback started or right after it started. So I really like that pick. And I think you got to give him really good, I think it's just really smart business strategy to be investing in high upside quarterbacks on day 3 of the draft. You know, maybe they were never going into this anticipating taking a quarterback. They just took Jake Haener in the 4th round last year, but he was sitting there. And you could either take that guy and maybe he never turns into anything and maybe he never plays it down for your franchise. Fine. But like if that guy's traits hit, like that's such a huge value there in round 5 that I think that's a great pick for them.
And look, I think everyone gets caught up because it's a quarterback. But I think if that was any position, they would have taken that. It was so high on their board. That was just a value pick. They said, this guy's sticking out. We've got him graded way higher than this. We're going to take him. And I think, you know, because it's a quarterback, of course, it's sexier. But I think if it were any other position, they would have done the same thing if it was that difference in the grade and where he was at.
Yeah, and I think some people are looking at this just considering the state of their roster right now and saying, like, we have so many needs. Why are you doing that? Well, it's day 3.
Right, it's 5th round.
It's day 3. Like, this is dart throw time, and maybe they hit a bullseye. Right. Maybe they missed the board entirely. Who knows? But, like, it's worth it for premium position players to take somebody in the 5th round with pick number 150 who maybe you were expecting to be gone before the day even started.
Yep,
and maybe they expected him to be gone yesterday.
Right. Well, and they showed a lot of reserve and patience with that pick too, because they had so many 5th round picks. They see him falling. They could have packaged those together and said, we got our guy, but they just waited to see if he was there, which I think even adds to your point, Jeff, of, all right, this was too good to pass up. This was, you know, worth taking a flyer. And I don't think, you know, when we've asked about Jake Haener this offseason, there's been a lot of like, we'll see how he does. At first, I thought that they didn't want to like put that many expectations on him because of, you know, him just being a young player. Now, with the Rattler pick, I don't know, maybe Haener didn't do himself any favors in year 1 with, you know, the suspension and I guess his preseason play. I know that happened before I got here. But
well, I mean, maybe, but I think there's also just an element to this of you know, it's good business practice to have developmental quarterbacks on your roster. And maybe Rattler doesn't turn into anything, but Haener does.
Yeah, sure.
You're giving yourself a two coin flips there. So I think it's smart.
Well, and New Orleans is in a state of a franchise right now where, you know, you need to find that quarterback after Breeze. Like, I think Derek Carr is a great bridge option. You know, he'd give you a lot of what he'll give you better than what all these other teams on the quarterback carousel have gotten. That's why they went out and got him. But he's not going to be the solution forever. And if you can find if you can especially hit on a 5th round pick or a 4th round pick, that's great.
Yeah. Okay. Let's dive a little bit more into these top 3 prospects. We're going to get back to Rattler here in a second. But Rod, I mean, you brought this up. The Saints absolutely needed to address their tackle problem in this draft, preferably high up. And you went on the record saying they needed to do it round 1, almost no matter what. Yeah, you would have been tempted by Brock Bowers, but he wasn't there. So
fortunately, he wasn't there.
So Taliese Fuaga is there, or for Fuanga. It's the appropriate way to pronounce this. What do you think the Saints are getting in him? Where were you kind of at on him before the draft, and now after that we've had a chance to talk to him, to talk to some other people about him? Where are you kind of sitting on this?
I was I just thought any of those top 4 tackles, I thought if the Saints could get any one of them, I thought they were going to come out good.
Talking about
Latham,
Alt, Shanu, and Fuanga.
Yeah. I felt like if they could get either one of those 4, I thought they were going to be in good shape. And the draft fell favorably for them. And then after talking to them and then talking to some other people, just kind of raving about him. I know Louis Riddick, when he talked about him that draft night, he said this is a guy that's going to be in the league 10, 15 years, going to be a multi-pro, all-pro player. And I mean, if he lives up to the expectations, I think the Saints have probably hit a home run in this. I mean, they may have a guy that's just as solid as Teron without the injuries, hopefully. But I mean, I think they got a really good pick, a guy that's going to really be able to help them out at a position that they really need. I mean, we talked about that for the entire 2 months leading up to the draft, and I think if they got what they needed.
I think one of the things I really like about him as a player is that he's kind of a tone setter. You know,
Yeah.
he's a tone setter in a way kind of unlike Penning, where Penning is, he's got the reputation of being a play up to the whistle, maybe a little bit after it, and that's kind of his persona as a player. Where I think Fuaga is more just like, kind of a bully out there.
Yeah.
A guy who plays just with this great play strength. Brian Baldinger described him as a player as anvils for hands. I think especially this team that's kind of looking to establish its identity offensively, having a guy like that can really help out.
Yeah, and he has a lot of confidence, and I don't know if Trevor came into the league with that confidence. I mean, I think he played at a smaller school, but this is a guy that played at a P5 school, Power 5 school, and I just think he's going to be NFL ready when he gets here. And the Saints better hope he is. If he's not, then it's a disaster. But I mean, I think this is a guy that's going to really help them out.
What do you think, Dunk? NFL ready?
Well, I mean, that's what everybody's saying, right? Jim Nagy said as much, thinks day one starter. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, though, with the uncertainty with Ramczyk. But now they've got kind of a safety net. And Dennis Allen said something that I thought was, important to note here. I don't think this was a guy they targeted. I think they were happy with any of those tackles.
Right.
They were all probably graded the same. And so they were just hoping whoever fell to them, they felt comfortable taking. And so I think this is a guy that it was in that grade that would be a starting caliber, first-round grade. Now, we'll see if he can play on the left side. That's something I think's probably going to play out. He's going to try and compete for the left tackle spot. But I think all of a sudden, this training camp, this offseason minicamp is going to be, we're all going to be watching the offensive line a heck of a lot more than we ever have, because there's going to be, I think, a lot of moving parts, and I think they're going to be experimenting with guys at a lot of different positions.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing we haven't hit on is he said that at Oregon State, the wide zone scheme was their bread and butter. New Orleans rushing offense was so mediocre or bad last year that
not a single running back had a gain of 20-plus yards last year.
He's really kind of that tone setter in the run game, and he does bully people. He does move. I think Dane Brugler called him a people mover. And to be able to get to that second level is really important as you're kind of looking to kind of revamp this offense. I think he can do that. I'm saying this more based on gut. I think he's going to be a right tackle. I don't know what's going on with Ramczyk. I know that they've said we'll see. Maybe he gets, even if Ramczyk can start the season, how much confidence do we have that he can last throughout the year? Like, he just makes a little bit more sense to me on that right side. And so while I do really like the pick, the question I have now is, what are they going to do for left tackle if they have to play him there? Is it going to be Ali Udoh, who they signed from Minnesota? He has experience there. Do they give Andres Pete another call now that the draft is settled and see what's going on with him? It's just, while I do really like the pick, I think there's enough concern at the left side for me. I mean, I guess Trevor Penning's also an option there. But that's the only hesitation. But I Luke, to your point earlier, I do think he could play the left, and he'd be really solid there. I feel bad for Ramczyk, because if he can't play, that really is unfortunate for him, and then I think it also really hurts the Saints.
Yeah, I kind of get the sense that they're not done there. I think they have to have another option at tackle. There's still some out there on the free agent market. Some of them come with big questions. I think Andres Pete is probably the most obvious because they have familiarity with him. He played really well last year at left tackle, but I think even Andres has some questions. Missed a lot of games in his career because of injury. Some of the other ones out there, David Bakhtiari, injury history, some like 15 games the last 3 seasons. Charles Leno's still out there. Yeah. He's got some injury history.
Donovan Smith, I think.
Donovan Smith, probably.
Oh my God! If they bring in Donovan Smith, it's wave the white flag.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of where they're at right now. I think they do have to consider some of those options out there, and there still are some options, including there and at safety, probably the other weak spot on the roster. I do want to, before we move on to Kool-Aid McKinstry here. I want to kind of pose a hypothetical to y'all. If Fuaga was ended up being the Raiders selection at 13, which I think was definitely a possibility, the Saints take Brock Bowers, 14 overall.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Didn't they say that
He's going to be up for
So that they-
consideration.
up for consideration, but
probably the highest graded guy they had, I would imagine, at that point.
yeah,
I'm guessing.
I think that would have. I think if that would have happened, I think we'd be talking about a completely different draft class right now.
Oh yeah, they had to get a lineman.
You
with the
have
second
to,
pick.
yeah. Like you might love Kool-Aid McKinstry, but you might be like, we have to use number 2 on a tackle.
they also. I mean, you don't know how serious the offers were, but they said that they considered trading down. Maybe they trade down and then pick Fatanu from Washington later on in the first, or they just take him there.
The thing,
know
the
that
thing that
they-
you're getting into kind of weird territory, though. If you trade back, like
Yes.
let's say they traded back with the Rams 5 spots, then everybody who's behind the number 19 pick there also knows that you are definitely going to take a tackle.
Right.
You're going to take Fatanu. So
Yeah,
if they
then
really
maybe
want
the
Fatanu, then
Steelers
like
jump up.
somebody's going to jump in front of
Yeah,
you.
because I actually don't think. I mean, I think it maybe would have been a little high, but all these tackles were bunched together. Maybe they just look at the next tackle on their board, and if it was
Yeah, what's the guy the
Fatanu.
Packers took?
Jordan Morgan.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you could. Who knows? I mean, these guys might end up being better than Fuaga. You just never know.
That's right.
You know, we never know.
and Amarius Mims actually went before, right? Or no? Where did
He
Fatanu
went
go?
to
What number was
Amarius
that?
Mims went 18 to the
Bengals.
Bengals.
Yeah, no, but what number was Fatanu? 20?
20.
Okay, so yeah, Mims went before Fatanu. So
Yeah.
I don't, maybe they just
Yeah.
go however they had these guys ranked. They just go to the next tackle. But yeah, Bowers would have been a interesting selection.
I think they're glad they didn't have to make that decision, though. Like,
Sure.
what are we gonna do?
I mean,
We'll see what they say in 5 years.
what was it? Was it last year? Dallas took Smith from Tulsa, pretty low.
Mozzie Smith.
No, it was 2 years ago. Then the offensive lineman from Tulsa,
Oh, yeah.
Troy Smith or
Tyler Smith?
Tyler Smith.
Oh yeah.
He went way. I mean, he was clearly better than Trevor Penning. You know, so I'm saying like he just never. You
Right.
never. We
That's
never
right.
know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's best. It's why we're giving grades after this draft class and come back in 4 years.
Right.
We're going to be like idiots.
yeah, some of these big offensive linemen. I just leading up to this draft. I mean, there's been a lot of guys busting out. You know that we're taking a first round.
And Mekhi Becton just signed a deal to be a swing tackle after being a top 10 pick.
Right, and then the Carolina, some of the left tackle at Carolina has not really been dominant like they thought. I think Giants tackle Thomas, so there's been some struggles. I think a lot because so many teams in college play these spread offenses and it doesn't translate very well. So I don't think that's the case with Fuaga though. He sounds like he actually has a very high floor of
Yeah,
all
I
these
agree.
guys.
High floor, high ceiling. I think he's a really
Right.
good pick.
Yeah.
He wasn't my preferred choice because I was looking at these guys like saying who could slide in at left tackle. And I think there's still questions about Fuaga there, but I think Fuaga is going to be a very, very good pro. Okay. Let's move on to the Kool-Aid Man. Second round comes by. The Saints own the number 45 overall pick in the draft. They end up trading it to Green Bay along with 2 of their day 3 picks to move up 4 spots and take McKinstry at 41. I thought there was a chance that that receiver might be their top priority in round 2. I know they liked a couple guys who ended up being taken early in that draft, early in that round. I think 4 out of the first 5 picks were receivers, something like that in the second round. Keon Coleman, Jalen Polk, Lab McConkey, and that might have been it.
The Corley went after, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Corley went to. I think he went in the 3rd round to the Jets.
Right.
Either way,
Yeah.
bunch of receivers go off the board early in the second round, but that pushed some of these defensive backs who might have had first round grades for a lot of teams, Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry, back to the second round, in middle of the second round. So Saints trade up to number 41. They take Kool-Aid. And I think the first thing a lot of people were thinking, I'm going to go to you for this, Jeff. What does this mean for the future of Marshawn Lattimore? So it kind of, when you see that pick, what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, well, it just first thing I thought was this is a pick that the Saints value probably more than a lot of other teams for that reason, because Lattimore's situation going forward. But also I think he's the prototype for what exactly Dennis Allen likes in his corners in their system. Like he fits their system a lot more than a lot of other teams. So they probably valued him very highly, probably at first round grade, I assume. But also, I think it gives them flexibility. The fact now you have another outside corner that should have starting caliber ability. Now you've got flexibility. If you did want to move on from Lattimore, you have that option. And I don't think that they will, but I think it gives them that option. Now, if you wanted to move on from him, you'd save money against the cap right after June 1. Then you clear out some cap room, which is much needed, and you still feel comfortable. And look, this team's shown that they can play good defense without Marshawn Lattimore. They had to do it a lot the last 2 years, and they've ended up in the top 10 both years. So as good a player as he is, they have great skill set at the cornerback position. So I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, but I think now you have that luxury if somebody comes at you in camp and says, maybe a contending team that feels like they're one player away and makes you a really good offer where you can have a high draft pick and clear out some cap space and you have a strength at that position. I would not be shocked to see them do it. They reworked his deal for a reason. I mean, you just don't do that when they did it for no reason. There's a reason they did that.
Yeah, it's signaling to the rest of the NFL, like, hey.
Yeah, and to Marshawn Lattimore.
We don't have to trade him, but, like.
And he agreed to do it. He agreed to do it. So, I mean, like, I think there's probably some interest on both sides.
Yeah. Rod, what was your kind of initial reaction when they took Kool-Aid?
I mean, I think immediately everybody thought about Marshawn. I mean, that's just kind of obvious. But I think it just says a lot about this franchise. I mean, I'm covering it, and Jeff's covered the team much longer than me. But, I mean, cornerback used to be, like, kind of an issue for this team.
Yep.
And now I think they figured it out, and they're getting some really good guys. I mean, I think we haven't even mentioned Paulson Debo, but, I mean, he's been really solid.
I thought he played at almost a Pro Bowl level.
Right. So I'm saying this is a position where they just adding depth to it, and like Jeff mentioned earlier, I mean, you can't go wrong with depth at corner. I mean, it's like one of the most important positions on the team. So I think it's a really solid pick for them. And I was surprised by it because I wasn't really thinking cornerback, but when they did, I was like, yeah, this is a guy who some people had as the best corner in the draft, before the combine and all that stuff. And he kind of fell a little bit, but he's a first round type talent. So if that can translate over to the NFL, it's going to be one that they're not going to regret.
All right. So for people who weren't in the draft room with us, after Kool-Aid was picked, I was sitting over here screen peeping on Matt's laptop, and I saw him watching a bunch of Kool-Aid highlights and documentary stuff. So what can you tell us about the person as well as the player, Matt?
Yeah, he seems like a fun person to cover. It was the guy we talked to from the SEC network.
Roman Harper, yeah.
Roman Harper said that the first time he met him, he was wearing so much ice, diamonds and jewelry that the temperature dropped 3 degrees in the room. I thought that was just...
Which tracked with like the image we got of him in the Zoom after the draft.
Ice cold Kool-Aid.
Yeah, ice cold. And it has, he has the Kool-Aid diamond necklace too, like of the Kool-Aid man.
Pretty sure he had a grill. He had like 4 watches on.
Right. She was very fun to cover. Like electric personality, really good basketball recruit. He was even recruited to play basketball at Alabama. But the thing that stands out about his game to me is even though he's, normally you hear this like kind of cliche in football of guys being like, they're so quiet off it, but once he hits the field, he's, another person. It's kind of the opposite with Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's just so reserved, so cool. Like, doesn't have the best speed in the world, I don't think, but I think he can get away with it. I think he'll be good at the next level because he just plays with this sort of composure that you don't really see in a lot of college corners. And, I think you listen to, we were at the Combine and Brian Thomas was asked who was the best corner he faced, and he said Kool-Aid McKinstry. So I do really like the pick. Cornerback was, I think, they could have easily gotten away with just rolling back what they had. I think they would have been fine. I think they would have missed Ike Yadam, but that wasn't a significant enough departure. But it makes a lot of sense. And, I think we saw with the Isaiah Foskey pick last year where if the second rounder has to sit most of the year, they're comfortable with that as long as he develops. And, we'll see.
So I think my take on this is you can never have enough good corners in the NFL. No matter how deep you think you are, it is always a position where guys are going to have to play. I mean, I remember 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. I might be mixing up my timeline here, but Saints go into camp and they have Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson and Debo and rookie Alontae Taylor, second-round pick, and they have Bradley Roby and they have C.J. Gardner-Johnson. It's like, what are they going to do with all these defensive backs? And they trade C.J. Gardner-Johnson because they feel like they're so deep. And then 4 games into the season, they're signing Chris Harris off the street to be a starting outside corner. So, I like it. Just you can never, ever, ever go into a season thinking you're just like, oh yeah, we're good at corner.
And most of the teams these days are in 3 receiver sets.
Yeah,
almost all the time.
Yeah.
So,
and the Saints played a lot of their defense last year was in dime.
Right,
Most 6 defensive backs on the field.
Yeah, so it makes sense. That's a premium position, man. That's what you spend those high picks on.
Yeah,
And I'm tempted to push back on that and to be like, well, you look at their roster and they had so many other needs. Like they don't know what they're going to do at left tackle if Fuaga has to play right. But just look at the way that the draft shook out in front of them. I think that played a really important role too. Of I think 8 tackles went in the first round. I think the 4th receiver that we didn't mention was actually the one at the end of the first round was Xavier Legette.
Yeah, Xavier Legette, Ricky
went-
Pearsall both went. I think the last 2 picks of the first round.
So that kicked off a receiver run. They missed their guys there. I think, you talk about Bowers being on the board at 14. I think if a receiver was there at 45 or in that range, they would have traded up maybe for a receiver. But that didn't happen, and then that run on cornerbacks happened in the second round. I think just the way that the draft shook out really kind of led them to this decision as well.
Yeah, well, and also like, I think teams that go into drafts like with the tunnel vision on the year in front of them end up making worse picks.
Right.
Like you have to get these guys who are going to play important positions for you, especially if they're people like Kool-Aid McKinstry, who maybe the Saints had a top 30 grade on him. And he's there at 41. You gotta beef up your roster at the most important positions. And yes, tackle is one of those positions. Wide receiver is one of those positions. But like, I think when you're looking at what was available for them at that point, I think there's a lot to like about that pick.
I think also the interesting thing about him too is when we talk about the Saints, we talk so much about them playing press man zone or press man coverage. But if you actually look at the numbers, they play zone like 60% of the time. Like they're in zone way more than people think. And I think coming from Alabama, where they just play a ton of different coverages, that actually works really in favor of the pick too.
Yeah, Kool-Aid listed off about 15 of them when we were asking
Right.
about coverages he played at Alabama. Okay, look, the day 2 goes by. The Saints don't trade back up into round 3, which I think all of us thought was maybe a possibility, just considering they had 7 day 3. Well, they had 7 before the pick at 41, but day 3 comes along and they don't trade up again. Yeah, they stay put at number 150. And the whole time they're sitting there watching Spencer Rattler continue to slide back toward him. And maybe they didn't think they were going in this direction. But he's there at 150, and they're like, we can't let this opportunity pass us by. So let's talk about Spencer Rattler, and let's talk about why quarterback may make sense, may not make sense at this point in the draft, and what you like about him, and what are some kind of concerns, what may be hindering his development. A guy who some people pegged a couple years ago as a potential number 1 overall pick ends up sliding to a team at number 150. So let's kind of suss this whole thing out, Rod. What do you think about it?
Well, coming into the draft, I wasn't really high on the Saints quarterback room. I mean, you got Derek Carr, obviously, but outside of him, I just wasn't really.
You're not a
Big.
fan of Nathan Peterman?
I'm not a fan of Nathan Peterman. Can never even remember his name most of the time. So, and then they got Texas A&M. Amon. And then Jake Hayner last year. So, I mean, this time a year ago, I was saying the Saints probably had the best quarterback room in the division. I thought with Derek Carr and Jameis. And now I think, they probably got the 3rd best. I mean, they're not better than Bryce Young and Andy Dalton or Atlanta has Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix and Taylor Heineke. So I thought the Saints really needed to at least try to find a backup that they can kind of count on, because I don't know how confident I am going into a season if Derek Carr's, if he goes down. I mean, I just don't really trust any of those backups. So I don't know if Spencer Rattler's the answer either, but I think the Saints needed to at least try to find another option. So I was good with the pick.
So I think all of us can see the potential there. He's got a huge arm. He's athletic enough. He's not super big, but he's big enough, you know. But I guess, Matt, you spent a considerable amount of time on Saturday working on a story about Spencer Rattler. What do you think maybe are the reasons that he's there at 150 instead of being off the board in day 2 like a lot of people expected?
Well, I mean, the NFL Network report was really interesting. They seemed to indicate that team executives kind of had concerns about Rattler's personality from when he was 17 years old and did this Netflix documentary that did not do him any favors in terms of he comes off very overly brash on the show, kind of a like competitive, but competitive to the point where you kind of seem
like tearing down teteammates and stuff like that. Yeah.
I was gonna say like a dick. I don't know if we can say that on this show, but yeah, exactly. No, Norm is shaking his head. No, that's gonna be an edit.
So he comes across as somebody who's not a great teammate.
No, but
as a 17-year-old high schooler.
But this is the thing what we were reporting out. At least you talk to the college coaches after the draft, and they were adamant that this guy is a great teammate. And maybe you would expect him to say that, but they really seem to go to the mat of, all right, like, consider yourself at 17. Would you want to be judged in a documentary? Would you want your life to be recorded at 17 years old? And I think it's a really valid point. And, to see the adversity he went through in college with losing his job to Caleb Williams, I do think, there is some natural maturity that goes on from 17 to 22, especially that. But to answer your original question of why did he fall, maybe it was that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think there's probably a little truth to both sides. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's definitely some meat on that bone that he's a cocky guy. But I mean, that's kind of what you want sometimes in your quarterback. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to judge him once he gets here on the merits. But I'm sure he's going to be on his best behavior coming in as a rookie, trying to find his place. I did talk to Archie Manning the other day about him. Archie spoke very highly of him when he was at the Manning Passing Academy. But I think it's an interesting pick in a lot of ways. I agree with Rod. I don't know what happens if Derek Carr goes down. I don't even know who's Kellen Mond might be the first call just because of his experience. But I don't know how good you feel about that. I mean, there's a lot of question marks, but there's also a lot of intriguing possibilities behind Carr. But this was strictly, I think, a value pick that they just felt like they had to be true to their process, and this guy on their board was too high to pass up. And we'll see how he plays out. But it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to watch him and Haener, who I know they're still high on Haener. I think the question, to Matt's point earlier, I think you just got a whole new offensive staff in here. They didn't draft Haener. I'm sure they were familiar with him from the draft process the year before. Maybe they weren't as high on him in their evaluations, and so they want some more options there. But I don't think anything's changed about the higher up people at the organization that still like him.
Well, maybe they weren't high on him, but maybe they are. But you have a chance here.
Yeah,
like you don't necessarily get a lot of chances on day 3 to find a quarterback who maybe has starting traits.
And I would say this, in just reading about Spencer Rattler, and I have to be honest, I didn't watch much of him at South Carolina. I did see him early at Oklahoma. He and Haener both seem like they have a lot of the traits in a Kubiak, what we think is a Kubiak offense. Some functional mobility, quick processing, ability to get the ball out quick, some of these things that accuracy that you like to see in a quarterback. But I'm really interested to seeing him in person working in this system.
I want to see him spin it, man, because I think that's the one thing that you aren't going to say about Jake Haener is he has like a live arm. He's got he's got an NFL arm. He's got a good arm, but Rattler. I mean, there's a play. Yeah, I was watching his highlights. When he was drafted, and I mean, there's a play where he's got a rusher in his face, and he's going backwards, and off his back foot, he flings it about 60 yards downfield to Xavier Legette for a huge gain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that stuff is rare. It's hard to find. Like you could get it in Joe Milton, but I think Joe Milton has like that one trait, and that's it.
Right.
Rattler combines that with a lot of other things. Now, maybe he never puts it together, and he's yet another day 3 quarterback who gets like a spot start here and there last couple of years in the NFL, and that's all you hear about him. But maybe they do put it together, and maybe he's a really, really solid pick, and if he never plays it down for the Saints, maybe he's a trade asset down the road. I think there's a lot of different positive ways this can go for the Saints, and the only really negative one is he doesn't pan out, and he's a day 3 pick that doesn't pan out, and there's a lot of those out there. Talking about the 150th pick in the draft, I would much rather take the lottery ticket than to take a guy who's maybe going to play a special teams role for you.
Yeah, the Saints a few years ago, remember they took a flyer on a tackle from Florida State. Was his name Leonard? Rick Leonard. Yeah, that's a good example. Like sometimes it's not going to work out, but he was a guy they took a flyer on, and he didn't pan out. But you have to do that at those premium type positions. Yeah. So I've got no problem with it at all.
This is the part of the show where I mentioned I covered Washington. So
really?
yeah.
I didn't know that win.
Ding. It reminds me of the Commanders picking Sam Howell in the 5th round a few years ago, and because same type of thing, Howell was supposed to be this top 1st round pick. His college, in Howell's case, North Carolina lost a lot of talent. He didn't perform as well. His stock dropped, but they felt like they were getting someone. Now Howell had he was a working project. Year 1 was the 3rd string quarterback pretty much the entire time until the last game of the season. Played well enough of that to where they thought, all right, we have something here. He's going to start 2023, and then was a bit of a mess. Started off strong, got sacked way too much, and then it affected his confidence, and he didn't play well enough to convince Washington they shouldn't draft Jaden Daniels. But I think there are similarities there with Rattler, because the Saints mentioned this, but they were really impressed with the way how Rattler performed with how bad South Carolina's offensive line was.
I think they sacked like 43 times last year.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and you look at the Saints' offensive line, not to be rude, but maybe there are some things that could translate if they don't fix that, if he has to play. I just think, but it's really the pedigree for me that makes him too hard to pass up. You just don't find a lot of these guys that were supposed to be the 1st overall pick in the draft. That was the trajectory he was headed before that 2021 season, and I'd actually be kind of interested to find out what happened there.
I think that's
at
important.
Oklahoma, because a lot of guys like Caleb Williams. When you have Caleb Williams surrounding him, it's interesting. But I don't know really what's there. Sorry.
Yeah, he was supposed to be the guy. So I do think that's a concern, because they weren't planning on starting Caleb Williams. The plan is he's going to sit behind Spencer Rattler. And so clearly he did not play well enough to meet those expectations.
I think I actually remember the game where Rattler got benched in favor of Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams came in and led a big rally after Rattler was struggling. Yeah. But to his credit,
he played well at South Carolina.
Yeah, he found a new home and really turned his career around in South Carolina. They were never this big contending team, but they had some big wins there, and they knocked off, he recalled knocking off Tennessee and Clemson in back-to-back weeks. Put up some pretty good numbers behind a shaky offensive line. Definitely worth a flyer, day 3. You might never turn into anything, but maybe he does, and then you're like, wow, what did another team see?
It's the next Tom Brady.
Wow. Okay. Let's not go there. All right, guys. Really quickly here, let's just kind of go through our favorite day 3 picks. Matt, I'm going to kick this one to you first, because I'm interested to see where you go with this, having spent a good bit of time on these guys. So I think I have my answer, but it might change depending on what you say.
Yeah, I think because I know your answer, I'll pivot here because
I'm gonna remove Spencer Rattler from the consideration.
Okay. Yes. I'm really interested to see. I want to. I'm gonna combine it. I'm gonna pick 2 guys, but I think they go hand
There's
in hand.
gonna be nobody left.
Well, man, there's 4 guys with 4 of us.
I'll leave it to one. Jalen Ford,
I
linebacker.
thought you were gonna go Jalen Ford. Okay, let's hear it.
Okay. Linebacker out of Texas, really, really productive in college. Sarkisian said that he was kind of that culture setter at Texas for their program. You look at the Saints; they really need to improve their run defense. Maybe he doesn't crack the field as a rookie, but maybe you could throw him on the field as kind of the stumping linebacker, and he plugs a hole there. I was tempted to say Christian Boyd for the same kind of thing.
Here we
If
So
go.
you still got your two in anyway.
There you
huh?
go, yeah.
Honorable
I'm not
mention.
saying he's the one. I'm going to stick with 4, and I'm going to be decisive here. But I just, it's an interesting pick just from a character. Seems like a really good dude, and I'm a fan of players with a lot of production in college. I think that's actually a good thing for the NFL.
A lot of production at high level college.
Yes.
Texas. 220 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 6 interceptions. Green dot guy. He's your defensive play caller. I think that I think he has a chance. Look, his speed is a little concerning.
Right.
I think he ran like a 4.7 at the combine, which probably is the reason he's there in the 5th round, despite all that production. But I mean, let's be honest about the Saints linebacker core. I think they got 3 clearly starting caliber players on the roster right now, in Demario Davis and Pete Werner and Willie Gay. Demario Davis is 35. Pete Werner and Willie Gay are both on the last year of their contracts. Willie Gay signed a 1 year, and Pete Werner's in the last year of his rookie deal. I mean, there could be some turnover soon in this position group. So I think it's wise to continue investing in it. This is, I think, 3rd straight year they've drafted a linebacker. I don't know if they drafted one last year. They drafted DeMarco Jackson in the 5th round a couple years before as well. They've got Nephi Sewell in the building. They got Monty Rice, who's a former high draft pick with the Tennessee Titans, in the building. Khaleke Hudson they signed. They've got Anthony Orji, who spent all last year on the practice squad. It's another player they like. So they've got some guys there, but I think Ford's really interesting. All right. Who wants to take the next one? Because I'm kind of interested. To
I'm
hear what you
going
guys have to
because
say.
I don't want him to take my guy.
That's okay. Yeah.
And he took Christian Boyd. So I'm going with Christian Boyd.
Okay.
Yeah, I like.
you
First of
going
all, I mocked Christian Boyd to the Saints with my genius
You gotta
mock.
pick him now.
He's a perfect Saints guy. I think they need a run stuffer. Heard a lot of great things from Matt Nagy about him. Apparently had a great Senior Bowl. And they need to get better in there. I mean, I think this guy could end up being a starter. I think he could do everything that Nathan Shepard's doing in a heartbeat, which is not a lot.
Not much.
Yeah, so I think they took him for a reason. This is a guy that I think could work his way into the rotation as a rookie, as a backup. And they needed help there. They needed depth in the defensive interior. So big believer in Christian Boyd. I had to jump in for Rod.
There's a path to the field for him.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at their defensive interior right now. It's Brzee, Colin Saunders, Nathan Shepard, and Crickets.
Yeah.
I mean Malcolm Roach. I think those were the only 4 interior guys to play for him last year. And maybe Jack Heflin got like a couple snaps late in the year, but
They brought in
lost
that guy, PJ
Mustipher.
Yeah, he was getting on the field at one point.
Yeah. There's no way PJ Mustipher should be getting on the field for you.
Right.
Yeah, nice guy and everything, but like, and they lost Malcolm Roach in free agency. There's a big gap there. They always have 4 tackles. They rotate in and out. He definitely has a shot at making the roster, especially considering their weakness last year stopping the run. 329 pounds, a guy who's going to play nose probably at the NFL level. It was a weak spot for him last year. Definitely has a chance to make the roster. All right. I know who I want to go with. I'm curious if we're going to pick the same
Rod's
guy.
We're gonna
excitement.
pick the same person, man. I'm going with Bud Means. Is that what you gonna say?
It's actually, I do really, really like Bud Means, but I want to talk about the other guys. So we're
Okay,
going
good.
to
It
cover
worked
all
out
of
good.
them.
Good. Yeah, I thought you were going with means. That's
Yeah, just he runs a 4.43, and I'm still not really sold on the depth behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. So just another receiver that's fast that I guess Clint Kubiak can find a use for him. But yeah, so
Yeah, and he kind of like super fits that. Hey, these are developmental guys, and we're just gonna get him in and see what we got. And there's like some things that are a little scary about him. He went to 3 schools. He wasn't super productive at any of them
Yeah,
until his
right.
final year at Pitt.
and even then he only had 700 yards. It's not like
Right. But I mean, man, there's some really exciting stuff there when you watch him. He's 6'1", 212, averaged 17 and a half yards a catch, strong hands, got some run after the catch ability. Maybe not like make people miss, but like I think there's like you said, I mean, beyond those top 2, look, A.T. Perry had a nice close to the season last year, but I think he's still improving. Still don't know exactly what he's got. And I think Means maybe gives you something that you don't have in the other guys on the roster right now, which is combination of speed and size. So maybe there's a chance he can kind of develop into this year's A.T. Perry, where he's kind of starting off slow, learning the ropes, and then by the end of the year, you're relying on him a little bit.
And we get to spread it around a little bit. And have we addressed all of them now? All the day 3 guys?
No.
One left.
Right.
We have. When I say I'm really intrigued by their 7th round pick, and look, I'm not anticipating he is going to contribute this year, even with their need at tackle. We're talking about Eastern Kentucky tackle Josiah Aziram. But man, there's a lot to like about that, and I would not be surprised if he makes the 53-man roster so that the Saints can protect the chances that he gets scooped up by somebody else after roster cuts. Because when you look at the player, he's still developing as an offensive lineman, so he's raw, but he's 6'6" and 329 pounds, and he's got an 85-inch wingspan and 35-inch arms and 11-inch hands. So they're basically the exact same measurements minus the weight as J.C. Latham. And everybody I've talked to about him said and this came off in the interview after the draft, is that he is a very intelligent, eager player, and who has improved every year of his college career once he made the switch to tackle. So I think there's a lot to like as a developmental prospect there, and somebody who could, potentially, if the Saints offensive line coaches, John Benton and Rick Dennison, get their hands on him and get the most out of that potential, they could find somebody who maybe could chip in some snaps as a swing tackle this year and maybe develop into something nice. So you're not expecting to get out of a 7th round pick very often. You just don't find guys who can move like that at that size in the 7th round very often. And the guy was a track star in high school. Ran like a 12-second 100-meter dash, which not competing for Olympics here, but for a guy that big to run in the 12s.
Yeah, I think each one of these guys has like a redeeming quality, and that's what you're looking for late in the draft. Is
100%.
Here's something we can develop the other stuff, but this is like an NFL caliber trait he has. Now let's see if our coaches can develop them, and all of them also fit that Saints mode, like those Saints kind of guys, right? They all have the size, the athleticism, big for most part, big schools, or just the redeeming quality of
Be
speed.
like a Zach Strief kind of guy.
I think he has a chance. Like a more athletic Zach Strief. Yeah. Zach Strief is more on the technique side. Yeah. I think Aziram's still got a long way to go there, but in terms of an athlete, yeah. Okay, really quick here. I just kind of want to get to it. Look, they signed almost a dozen players after the draft, undrafted free agents. They always seem to find one or two guys who are contributors in that realm, whether it's special teams, offense, defense. So rapid fire here. Who's your guy out of that class you think has a legitimate chance to make the team and contribute?
It's Dallin Hogan for me, the tight end from Colorado State, who I wouldn't have even known about probably if it wasn't for Deion Sanders, who hyped that Colorado State game up, and he had a really big game in there.
Torched him. 109 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I watched some of his highlights the other day. I mean, he had so many just one-handed catches, and he caught one in the snow. I think that was against Air Force, and I saw him take a direct snap and score a touchdown. So they can do a lot of things with him. He's a little undersized for a tight end, but I think he's a guy that, with just the way he catches the ball, is going to really be able to help this team. I wouldn't be shocked. I think he'll make the team.
Yeah, what's their tight end depth behind Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau? Michael Jacobson and Tommy Hunter?
Well, Taysom Hill.
Taysom is listed as a quarterback on the roster.
Let's not forget Taysom Hill.
He's one of the
Is
five.
he
He's
gonna
one of
be
the
the greatest player of all time?
Is he going to 6?
Maybe the greatest player of all time.
6. Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Look, I love Taysom Hill. You guys know that, but I have no idea how he's going to be used in this Kubiak offense.
He
Is he
caught
going to
some
be a
balls
tight end?
last year. He got a lot better as a receiver last year.
Yeah, but maybe he's just.
He did.
But maybe you don't consider him as a tight end on the roster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jermaine Jackson from Idaho.
The easy pick.
Yeah,
I'm really glad you went that way, but
Well, I wrote about him today too, so that's kind of he's fresh in the mind. And I don't remember the 6'4" kid receiver's name from.
Kyle Sheets.
Yes, from
Slippery Rock.
Slippery Rock. There you go. He's also interesting, but Jermaine Jackson, only 5'6", very small, but man, that dude is just electric in the punt return, kick return game. It's can't just say he's the next Deontay Hardy or
Can't you?
Rashid. Oh, it was my headline. You just can't assume, but they have a track record. They know what they look for, and this guy checks every box for that. And his confidence is also very fun. He said the reason he switched from cornerback or defensive back to first running back then receiver was because he decided that the game was a lot better with the ball in his hands, which, God, love that quote. So
And with the new kickoff rules, I mean,
Yeah,
there's probably more
absolutely.
opportunities for
Well,
them. So that
not,
works
not
out
only
for 'em.
that, but like they like it might incentivize teams to have two returners
Right.
back there.
Right, a lot of teams.
So you
are
don't
talking about doing it. Yeah,
you don't need just Rashid Shaheed on the roster. You need another guy.
yeah.
And look, if I were a return specialist who didn't get drafted, like my very first call is to the Saints.
Right.
Deontay Hardy.
Role.
Deontay Hardy, Rashid Shaheed. They had another guy in here. I think it was like from Murray State or something like that. He was like a really good returner. It just didn't pan out. But like Darren Rizzi knows what he's doing here. And Darren Rizzi was also the driving force behind that new kickoff rule. He's going to know how to use it to the best of his advantage. If that skill translates at all, like he's like the easiest pick out of here to make the roster. I'm glad you went with him. Easy pick.
yeah, I'll take what's there for me.
What you got
Glad
there?
you didn't take 3 or 4 of them. I like Rico Payton, the corner. I think where's he from? Pittsburgh State or
Pittsburgh
something like
State.
that. Yeah, it's the kind of guy. Speed, got a redeeming quality, and I think there's room in the Saints secondary for different roles there to make the roster. And also, I have to say that the kicker from Ireland, who doesn't really count in this
Charlie
class,
Smith.
I think he's got a shot because I think the kickoff change is going to open the door there. So we'll see what happens.
My honorable mention guy, by the way, was a receiver from Yale who's also really fast.
Right.
Mason Tipton.
Mason Tipton, yeah.
We've got some news here that while we were recording, the Saints signed Will Harris from Detroit. Former third-round pick. He was their nickel,
Okay.
starting nickel. So
Well, there you go.
they've added some help there.
Makes
They,
a lot of
they
sense.
have added some slot corner depth there, which I think probably they needed. I think they have a lot of guys on the team who could play that position. Okay, real quick before we get off of here, I'm going to say my guy, which I'm surprised none of you guys went with. And I'm probably going to be butchering his name. I wasn't on Zoom yesterday. Matthew Highball?
Yep.
Highball?
Yes.
Highball.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Highball. Like the alcoholic beverage, a highball. Yes.
You
Okay.
would know that for sure.
As a Wisconsinite, yes, I
Yes.
do know that. Look, Lou Headley was underwhelming last year. The Saints stood by him throughout. But the fact of the matter was he ranked bottom in the NFL in gross punting average and net punting average. Had a lot of kicks down inside the 20, but I think the thing they were kind of hoping would materialize there didn't. Not a lot of return yardage against him, which was great. But when the reason for that is you're only kicking the ball 39 yards,
Yep.
yeah, I think you got to look at other options there. Highball is another Australian punter, another guy who kind of was a practitioner of the rugby style the kick in college. It's not going to be what he's doing in the pros, but I think he's going to give you maybe a little bit more leg. And also he's a left footer. I know that one of the big redeeming qualities of Headley was he kind of kicked a weird ball as an Australian that made it difficult to catch. If the guy's kicking it from the left side, I think it's also going to be difficult to catch. So I really like his chances of going out there and winning the job. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I've literally never seen the guy kick. Try to look up Vanderbilt punter highlights on the internet. It's not very easy to
He
find.
was an All-American. He was the first All-American.
First All-American in
from
Vandy's
History.
no, not their history, but it's been like 15 years. But he was a Ray Guy finalist. He top 10 nationally last year in gross and net punting average. If he can even come close to replicating that at the NFL level, I like his chances of winning that punting job because I think the Saints need to get a lot better there.
And he
Yeah.
probably punted a lot at Vandy, right?
Yeah, probably so.
Might be punting a lot here.
Kind of like that. His countryman Tory Taylor. Everybody's talking about him as the best weapon at Iowa last year.
Right.
And look, I would say, I think you're spot on. Like, I don't think Lou Headley's got any lock on this job at all.
No. I think we could see both of the specialists win the jobs.
Right. I think it's wide open.
Yeah. 3 out of the 4 specialists in the Saints roster this year hail from countries outside the U.S.
Yep. They'll go anywhere to find players. I would say this. We were talking earlier. I forgot to mention this key factor on what's the 7th round tackle's name?
Josiah Izerum.
Eastern Kentucky, where I started my collegiate tenure. Spent many a night at the Dog. Was an Eastern Kentucky Colonel. I thought you'd mention that for sure.
You got that dog in you.
Yeah. Dog, great bar there. Eastern Kentucky was a long, proud program for a long time. I think they've fallen off recently, but I'll certainly be spending some time with Josiah talking about the Richmond campus.
Do people in Eastern Kentucky call it the Dog?
No, just the
Go
Dog.
to the Dog.
Dog. Many a night. I went to my first panty raid in Eastern Kentucky.
All right, on that note.
We'll talk about that on another pod.
We got 2 bleeps here, Norm.
On that note.
We got to bleep 2 things out of
come
this
on.
What's
shit.
wrong with going to a panty
Come
raid?
on, man.
Come on. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a college tradition.
Uh-huh.
So we'll talk
Back
about
before
that.
you could be canceled.
We'll talk about that on another
All right,
another
let's
podcast.
get out of here. That is enough for today. Guys, thank you for joining us. I am Luke Johnson, again, joined by Rod Walker, Matthew Paras, and Jeff Duncan. Hopefully we get Zach Ewing back and we can rein Duncan in a little bit next time. But until next time, we appreciate you guys for following. Please like and subscribe our channel. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We're at Saints Insider. We appreciate y'all's support, and we will see you next time.